All right. So we're going to set up here with some chairs, and I'm going to invite our guests up, and we'll have a little conversation about the film. And if there's time, hopefully there will be, we'll let you ask a couple of questions as well. So we have, wow, we're going to have a lot of people here. I think I'm on this side. You know, I was trying to think how many times Brian Wilson has been here, actually, and I mentioned to you that the very first program we ever did here was with An Evening with Brian Wilson, and a great performance, and that really started this whole Evening With program and the public programs that we've been doing ever since. And then I remembered, and some of you might have been here, we did a big Beach Boys exhibit, and then we had the entire band here, and they broke up on stage. Do you remember that? They actually broke up on this stage. We'll bring them back, and they'll reconnect again maybe at some point. But anyway, look, this was a great film, and I'm looking forward to hearing from my guests, my colleagues. So I don't know where everyone's sitting, but first I would like to bring up, obviously, the director, Brent Wilson. Next, my good friend, Jason Fine. How about from my morning jacket, Jim James? And who else are we bringing up here? Fine, right? A little bit. Yeah. 15. Gotcha. Okay. All right. I'm going to slide this way so I can see you guys. Well, first of all, congratulations on a great film. Great film. You know, I was watching this the second time I've seen it, and I was trying to think what was the most memorable, most meaningful part of the film. And for me, it came to me sitting next to you over there. I said, that's the one. And it's when Don Was basically does the tracks God Only Knows. And it's pretty incredible. Pretty incredible. What was that like filming that?
It was a remarkable moment. I forgot we were making a movie.
Yeah.
I was sitting there listening to those tracks, and I was having the same reaction that Don was. And Don had told me afterwards, he goes, I've worked with Brian. Don's done a lot of work with Brian over the years. And he goes, I've never gotten my hands on these tracks, and you've given me the greatest gift I've ever had. And so when he was doing, I was having the exact same reactions. Our camera operators were having the exact same reactions. And yeah, I forgot we were making a movie.
Yeah.
And it was an amazing experience.
The idea of calling it Long Promised Road, where did that come from? You could have picked, there's a lot of great Beach Boy songs with Beach Boy titles. You picked that one. What reason?
Absolutely. There was a lot of debate about the song title, or I'm sorry, the film title. And when that came to me, I pitched Jason on the idea. We were talking, we were going back and forth on so many songs and so many different titles, and Brian kept asking for Long Promised Road, and he kept wanting to hear that. In the film, I think we see it twice, but I think over the period of the days that we shot, he probably asked for it, what, 5, 6 times?
He was really drawn to that song and to, I think, hearing his brothers sing.
Yeah.
And so when he would ask to hear that, and then when you listen to those lyrics, and then I think that connection to his brothers, I thought, you know, it's Long Promised Road. This is what it has to be, even though it's not, particularly a Brian Wilson song. It's more of a Carl song. And we caught a lot of hell, I think, from some fans. There was a lot of fans that came on the boards and said, this is a Carl song. These guys don't know what they're doing. And they say never interact on social media, but I did. I was like, please just give it a chance. I promise you it'll reveal itself, and hopefully it did. I think Brian's reaction to hearing the song, I think, speaks volumes.
Yeah. Your journalistic talents come through in this film big time. You're the narrator. I mean, you're actually going with the conversations in the car to keep going with the questions and just making sure that the film had a pace and getting those questions, getting the answers out of Brian. How difficult was that?
I mean, to me, it wasn't difficult. It was enjoyable. You know, being with Brian, driving around L.A., I mean, how much better to get than that,
good, right?
You know? And you know, I thought a lot when we were driving that this guy has lived his whole life in, you know, maybe 20 miles from where he was born is where he lives now. And so when he drives around, he's looking out the windows, you're kind of thinking, like, how many memories he must have. So that was great. And I think also just letting Brian tell his story in the way he wanted to tell it and have the memories he wanted to have and share was, was a joy.
Yeah. You've known him for a long time. What did you learn about him from this film that you didn't know before?
He can eat a lot. There was a lot of food involved. You don't see it all in the film.
Came through all right, though.
It's about 10% of our budget,
Yeah.
I think, was those lunches.
But also, he's paying attention all the time, and he sometimes checks out, and sometimes he's, seems like he's not paying attention, but he's always paying attention. He's always got something sort of funny to say. He's very deadpan. So I think that, but also, on a deeper level, the thing that both Brent and I think, really learned is how much he thinks about his band, his brothers, maybe things he didn't get to say to his brothers when they were alive. He was, in a lot of the scenes, I think, he's really communing with his brothers through that music. And he's like that part where he's listening to Dennis's record, Pacific Ocean Blue. He really wanted to listen. He really wanted to pay attention. And I think it kind of dawned on him how much his brothers really stepped up at a time later in the 70s when Brian really couldn't. And you feel him communing with that. And I thought that was really powerful to me.
Yeah. Jim, as a songwriter, you look at Brian's work, and you were very articulate in your description of his genius. But when you hear these songs, I mean, they're so timeless. What do you think is if you had to, for a non-songwriting group or audience, what are the components that are consistent in his songs? What are the things that make them timeless and make them so brilliant?
I mean, to me, it's proof of God. It's proof of a higher power. It's proof that love is alive in all of us. I think there's few songwriters you can look at, like Brian, who have both been there in the most joyous times of your life and also in the times of greatest sorrow. Over the course of my life, as a kid, laughing and dancing to the early Beach Boys stuff, as an adolescent and an adult trying to deal with life, having Pet Sounds there, having all the beautiful music they've created through the 70s and everything. I mean, just it's almost so much you can't even put it into words, So for me, it's I don't know what God is, or I don't subscribe to any particular faith or anything, but I feel like through Brian's music you hear proof of something higher.
You hear the word spiritual with his music often. And on the surface, of course, you think about surfing, you think about some of the lyrical themes, especially from the early 60s, and you may not pick that up. But you're right, once you dig deeper into it, there is, especially after Pet Sounds and during Pet Sounds, Smile, etc. As a music critic, Jason, where, if I'm not mistaken, we did something back at Rolling Stone years ago where we did the top 500 albums, right? And Pet Sounds was number 2, if I'm not mistaken. And then there was a recent one, 6-8 months ago? And was it number 2 again?
Yeah, it stayed at number 2.
What was number 1?
I mean, Sgt. Pepper didn't stay number 1. It got moved into like 30 or
Marvin
something.
Gaye was What's Going On.
What's Going On,
number
yeah.
1 now, but Pet Sounds is
I'd say it's a
steady.
tie.
Yeah. I mean, that record just, and he's played it live. And when you see him play it live, you see the power that it has still to this day. And it's kind of amazing to me that, those songs he wrote when he was 21, 22, and he's singing from this perspective of looking at life, going forward and what he hopes and dreams for. And then now singing it as an older person looking back on his life, it's still as poignant now as it was.
Yeah. Brent, you had a number of people that you interviewed in the film, Elton John, Bruce. It was an interesting collection of people that basically did the commentary there. How did you choose who to interview?
It's a great question. It was actually, I wanted a really interesting collection. That was the idea. It was like, how can we get a diverse a group as we possibly can? Because I feel like Brian's music crosses all genres, and his music crosses all generations, and I wanted somehow to represent that. And so I thought, Bruce is an American icon. Elton is an European icon. Jim is kind of got that indie vibe that, there's a spirituality that comes with Jim. Nick Jonas comes from a much younger generation. He started as a teenager with 2 brothers making music, and he tried to transition into adult music that maybe wasn't as received as his popular music. So I thought Nick Jonas is going to he can really identify with this. And then when we were shooting at the Hollywood Bowl, it was a remarkable night, and it was actually our first day of shooting, and I was just kind of looking around and taking it all in. I looked over my shoulder, and I see Gustavo Dudamel surfing, and I go, oh my God, we got to get Gustavo Dudamel. So, because he's up there, rocking out to Surfing Safari. And so we reached out to Gustavo Dudamel, and here's a man who's from South America. He's from Caracas, and he loves Brian Wilson. And so that was the idea. I didn't want to have a lot of talking heads, but I wanted those that were there to bring a different experience and a different genre, and hopefully that kind of comes through.
Yeah. It's interesting having Bruce up there because, I grew up on the Jersey Shore with him, and he started to surf because of the Beach Boys, as we all did. So the Beach Boys wasn't just a California phenomenon. It went right across the country, and even places, I don't know, what was it like in Kentucky? You guys were grooving the Beach Boys, right?
Oh my God! Well, I made the joke the other day. It's like we didn't have the beach in Kentucky, but we have the lakes, and I mean, when we would go out on the lake, like there's nothing like flying across the lake while the Beach Boys are blasting out of the boat stereo. It's like, yeah.
And Bruce did. He talked. Because I had asked Bruce. I said, did you start surfing because of the Beach Boys? He goes, well, of course.
Yeah, everybody did. Yeah.
And he was like, everybody. Everybody at that particular time, except for Little Steven.
Yeah.
He said Little Steven hated that surfing shit.
Yeah.
That was what he said. And I go,
as did Brian.
Yeah, exactly. And I said, well, I can absolutely see that. But Brian, but Brian, I think Bruce recognized really early on. He said that there was more there than just the surfing music, and it was clear. It was in. I'll tell you, this is a funny story. All right, I'm going to dive. We're going to because I know you're a Bruce guy. You're from the Jersey Shore, so I'm a big Bruce fan, and my wife is here, and she knows that interviewing Bruce Springsteen about Brian Wilson was probably the greatest day of my life, and she knows that. Marriage is really close second, but so I know a lot about Bruce, and I asked him about how did you what was it the song that got you exposed to Brian, and he told this amazing story about hearing Surfing Safari and the little radio on top of his refrigerator and eating his Cheerios in the morning and hearing that song, and he's saying that answer, and I'm thinking to myself, do I say anything? It's my very first question. Do I try to correct Bruce Springsteen? And I thought, what the hell? I'm here. What am I going to do? So I said, Bruce, I got to say, I really thought you were going to say in my room. And he busted out laughing. And that's the clip you see in the film. And then I cut out and he goes, you're right. It was in my room. And that's the song. And I know Jim talks about that when we did our interview. In my room was the gateway drug, I think, for most diehard Brian Wilson.
Sure. Yeah. What was the most difficult part about making this film, Jason, for you?
I think that Brian's story has been told a lot of times in a lot of forums and books and in movies. And I always felt that, Brian's not always the most talkative guy. He's not always the guy who's going to lead the conversation. So how do you help him tell his story in a way that you're not leading, in a way that he can tell the story he wants to tell? And so really focusing on that, not trying to push a story, but to hear what he wanted to talk about and then following those threads. That was the part. And he led the way in the sense that he wanted to talk about his brothers. And so we went there.
How about you? What was the hardest?
I think just waiting to get it out. The film's been done.
When did you start?
We started almost 5 years ago. Yeah. I think the hardest part has been, and the film's been done for almost 2 years now. We were fortunate, our producers, Teresa Page, Tim Headington, we set on the film and we wanted to get it into a theater. That was a really tough process, just waiting to have people see the film. Getting into the edit, trying to find the story within 70 hours. We had 70 hours of Brian and Jason driving around. And Jason told me when we first spoke to him about doing this and this idea, and he goes, Brian, sometimes, we'll go 20, 30 minutes and he'll not say anything. And I said, that's okay. That's fine. The old saying, tape is cheap. And I said, so it was just that, is it going to work? And when we finish the edit, that expectation of our fans, is the audience going to be okay with sitting on Brian's face? You know, are they going to be okay with him not always answering in complete sentences? Are they going to be okay with the music sometimes speaking for Brian? And those are things I think as a filmmaker you just, you know, you don't know until it gets, until you hear the applause.
Yeah.
So that was nerve-wracking.
Yeah. Jason, we were saying a little while ago, you know, back in the day when we started out as music journalists, there were lots of music magazines. And the whole art of music journalism has really gone away through print media. And now there's documentaries coming out. There's the use of film to tell stories about popular music. And this is a great one. Is this something that you're involved in now, doing more and more? You mentioned that you do content development now for Rolling Stone. What are some of the projects, kind of things that you're working on now?
Well, we're doing a lot. I mean, you know, I think that to me it's really an extension of the kind of journalism that we've done at Rolling Stone for a long time, and long before me, and hopefully long after. But, you know, I think that telling stories that cut a little deeper, telling stories that give you real access to people's worlds and experiences in a way that isn't just a sit-down, hour-long interview in a hotel lobby. You know, that's really important, and that's the kind of stuff I love to do. And in this, you know, I think you get that opportunity to really just live in someone's world for a little while and see what it's like.
Yeah, yeah. Jim, I wanted to ask you before, as a songwriter, how much has Brian influenced you? I mean, obviously you're not writing about the same themes, same topics from a whole different part of the country, yet the influence is there. Explain where we see Brian in your songs.
I mean, for me, it's like, I feel like music's like the invisible architecture that holds up the world, right? It's like everything is held up by music, and the first music was the sound of the wind, or you know, the sound of the waves, or whatever, you know, and every so often a human will come along and add something to the architecture that's so significant that it impacts everybody who comes along after. And I feel like Brian's one of those architects that's like so profoundly affected me. It's in such a deep way I don't even know. You know what I mean? It's like because there's so many things to it that I couldn't even begin to put into words. You know, of course there's the harmonies and you know whatever. There's things you could say, but it's like it's just. Yeah, it's almost like the sound of the birds chirping or something, how much it's meant to me, his music.
Yeah. When you think of Brian, or when we think of the future thinks of Brian Wilson 100 years from now, Jason, what are they going to say?
Number 2 record of all time, I suppose.
I guess.
You know, I don't know. I mean, I just know that you know, I think the emotional impact of the music. It doesn't really come from a time or place. You know, I mean, you can put on Pet Sounds today, and it sounds probably even more powerful than it did the day it came out. You know, and that record wasn't a record that people really loved and gravitated towards. They learned to love it over time. So I think that music is just, I mean, a cliche word is timeless. You know, it just exists, and kind of like what Jim's saying. I mean, it's part of the architecture of how we feel and hear things. So I think that will always be.
You know, speaking of Brian Wilson, he's here, and I think we should invite him up on stage. What do you think?
Yeah, it's the main event.
Right?
Yeah, I don't think anybody needs to hear us anymore.
Hey, Brian, why don't you come on up here and join us?
There he is.
One of the things that I really like about the film, and obviously you guys already knew, all three of you, was how good he was. He wasn't just a composer. He wasn't just a band leader. He wasn't just a musician, songwriter. I mean, he did everything. And I'm just wondering, when you think about all of having complete control of that music, how hard was that for you?
It was easy, very easy.
Just a good instinct, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you guys, when you think about him as a great producer, obviously he got a lot from Phil Spector, right, as did so many other people. What other things do you hear in his production? We talk about a little bit of his songwriting. What about his production? What do you hear?
Production?
Yeah.
I mean, producing.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that Brian said to me when we were making it, he said, I remember we were backstage one night, and remember this? You said, I think people really like this music. And I thought, like, after all these years, you're really feeling the love. Were you feeling the love?
Yeah, I was feeling it. Yeah.
I love for me when you were recording Honeycomb. When you recorded Honeycomb, you told me that you wanted to record that song the night before you went to the studio. I wasn't even sure who sang it originally.
Jimmy Rogers.
Jimmy Rogers. And I was like, I've never even heard of this song. And you said, I want to record Honeycomb. And I called Paul Mertens and at his hotel, and I said, Paul, Brian wants to record Honeycomb. And he goes, I'm on it.
and really what you see in the studio when he recorded, I mean, that's Brian in the studio taking charge. And that's, you know, you feel comfortable in that studio space, yeah?
Yeah.
Can I ask real quick? So, because I don't get to ask any questions in the movie. It's all Jason. Why Honeycomb? Well, do you know? Is there a reason that you love Honeycomb so much?
I like the lyrics.
The lyrics. Yeah.
Well, it's darn good life, and it's kind of, yeah.
I love that moment in the film. Yeah, it was a beautiful moment with the band, and some of the band is here tonight, Brian. I know I saw Darian here, and I know some of the guys are here tonight. So it was a beautiful moment, I think, to see Brian work with his band like that. I know it was one of my favorite moments.
Yeah. You know, I was saying before you guys came up here, Brian was the first one we had here. He had his band here, and it kind of broke this stage in. You know, It was a great evening. And then we had the Beach Boys here as well. And so this is the third time Brian's here, and it's always a pleasure to have him here, honored by certainly one of the great pop songwriters, composers, arrangers,
Thank you very
producers.
much. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. All right, you know what we're going to do? If I can get some lights here, we got about 5 or 10 minutes. I'm going to let you guys ask some questions. Just put your hand up and I'll acknowledge you, and then you can ask your question. Okay, where are we? Way in the back there. There you go. Go ahead. Roger Steffens, absolutely. How are you?
I'm just celestially high today.
Good. I doubt that, but go ahead. Go ahead.
Brian, I have always wanted to meet you, sir. Not just to say thank you.
Thanks.
We were born days apart. And I'm wondering where the stars were in June of 1942. I was born on the 17th, McCartney on the 18th, and you on the 20th.
Right.
Wow.
For many years, I've been involved in reggae music, and I'm a biographer of Bob Marley's, and I'm wondering if you ever listened to the original trio of Bunny Wailer and Peter Tosh and Bob Marley.
Yes, I have. Yeah.
And what did you think of their music?
I liked it.
Enough for me.
Another question. Let's see. Yes.
Hi, Brian. Question for you. You recorded a song with Bob Dylan some years back. You remember that experience, and what was it like working with Bob?
Who, Bob?
Bob,
He was a good singer.
Can you do you remember the story, Brian, that you told me about meeting Bob Dylan, where you met Bob Dylan?
He got his thumb broken.
Did you meet him in the emergency room?
I met him there.
Because I know the song you're talking about, and we thought about trying to include it in the film because Brian told Jason that story about I can't remember why you went to the emergency room, Brian. I can't remember, but you were in the emergency room and Bob Dylan was in the emergency room.
Yeah.
At the same time. Can you imagine what that nurse must have thought?
Malibu we are.
It's like, holy hell. Bob Dylan and Brian Wilson in the emergency room.
Go ahead.
My name is David. Hi, Brian. I have more of a statement than a question. I love you, Brian.
Yes, we did.
Thanks, sir. Thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
I had a quick question about how this friendship kind of blossomed between an interviewer and an interviewee. find that combination between professionalism and friendship? How did you create this friendship?
Friendship, I don't know. I don't know.
How about you, Jason?
I would just say, you know, that sort of being honest, being authentic, being not pretending that you're something that you're not, you know, I mean, reporting on what happens, but being, you know, truthful to the emotional impact of it at the same time. You know, I don't think that this kind of journalism is objective in some way. Trying to help Brian tell his own story, and that's what the role is. And in that sense, you know, a closeness is helpful.
Brian, hi, I'm right here. My name is Ann, and I just wanted to know, you mentioned you want to do some more rock and roll songs. You mentioned artists in the film.
Chuck Berry taught me how to write rock and roll.
Perfect. And is there a specific song of his that you want to record?
On Chuck?
Yeah.
Johnny Be Good.
Yeah, we laid that down in the studio, Brian.
Did you?
Yeah, we laid it down. We didn't finish it, though, did we, Darian? I don't think we finished it. I know we laid it down. We laid down Johnny Be Good in the studio, and we laid down Johnny Be Good and Little Honda, so we got to go back in the studio and finish those songs.
Right.
Yeah, Johnny Be Good is waiting to be done.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yes.
Brian, when I was 13 years old, the first song I slow danced to was Surfer Girl with a neighbor girl that I had a crush on. Back in those days, did you enjoy writing ballads or faster songs? Or
I enjoyed writing ballads, yeah.
Great. You did a great job. Martin the song, even Ballad of Old Betsy, was a great song.
Ballad of Old Betsy, right.
That's a great one.
Last question in the back. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I'm talking to the guy that wrote Good Vibrations. I was actually at the Pet Sounds Pantages show that you played, and I'm sure a lot of other people were there too. I'm just, you know, I know how I felt watching that, experiencing that. What's it like to play that album from start to finish, this masterpiece?
You mean Pet Sounds?
Yeah.
Oh, it took about a year.
What's it like playing it now?
It's a lot of fun.
The band's incredible. I think Brian's band. Bruce talks about it in the film. I love the clip where he says, you know, Bruce says, I went and saw the show. I got me a nice seat down front, and he goes, I thought for sure they were rolling tapes on it, and then they're not. And it's Brian's band, and they're incredible the way that they honor Brian's music and the way they honor that album. And I love that moment in the film. I absolutely love it, because I think, Brian, you've put together one kick-ass band.
You said members of the band are here. Who's here? Who's here? Darian?
Who's here?
There's a couple
Darian's
guys.
here.
There you
Who
go.
else?
Stand up. Be acknowledged.
Who's here?
Yeah. Who else is here?
Probe, and who else is here?
All right.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, look, guys, again, congratulations on a great film. It was a joy to watch. It's a joy to have you here again, Brian, at the Grammy Museum. Best of luck. I know you got Best Documentary at the Nashville Film Festival,
We
right?
sure did, yeah, we sure did, yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Good, good. So what can we expect? Will there be a theatrical now, or what's...
We've been out now for a couple of weeks theatrical. Our streaming is rolling right now. We're getting ready to roll out internationally. So we can't wait to get it to Brian's fans in the UK, because I know Brian loves London.
I do, yeah.
And we can get Brian over to London. That's what, we want to get, get that would be fantastic. But we feel very blessed to be able to have this film seen in theaters and seen now with audience members. And how about to hear it in a theater?
That's right, yeah, exactly. Sounds good.
Hearing it.
Brent Wilson, Jason Fine, Brian Wilson, Jim Janes, everyone.